Hey guys, I'm going to do a quick video here on a couple of things I did not go over prior to the last video, which was just of me driving this one quick time up and down the street. And it's basically the stuff I was dealing with before that, which was what I wound up doing with the transmission setup, the clutch and shifter setup. There's not really going to be a better time to do it than right now, because I'm working on the dash and I'm working on the firewall after that. And then once those things are in, I'm making those removable, but once they're in, this stuff is going to be buried. So there's not really going to be a better time to show you than now. And then also next week I'm back busy with commercial and industrial stuff again, so I'm just not going to have the time to get into this stuff. And let's go ahead and get into it. It's getting crazy hot here in Texas, so I don't know how much time I'm gonna have before my phone camera decides to crash. So I made this arm off of the factory shifter arm. I didn't want to mess with that because it's machined and adjustable for that shift shaft, so that you can rotate it anywhere 360 degrees on the splines. So I built this arm off of it, which I actually had to make twice because this was 2 inches taller and I had to cut it down. The reason being, the circumference of the circle, or the diameter, whichever way you want to look at it, from the pivot point to the pivot point of the shaft was getting too long. And the bigger that circle is that has to travel, the more throw you need in your shift linkage to engage the transmission properly. So that wound up being just about right there. And that goes from that 5/16 Heim onto that shift linkage arm. And that will come inside. You can see this. This is actually the dash that I was talking about that I'm working on right now. So that comes in right there. And from this arm, it comes over here and pivots. Then it goes over to another Heim at that end. And then this is actually the factory shift linkage for a Harley Sportster. The guy that I bought the engine off of, he was actually gracious enough to give that to me, that little piece of linkage. So I went ahead and reused it because it's a stainless piece. And up to your shifter arm. Now this system, I had to make 2 pivot points in. One being right here, and then the other one being right there. These wires are kind of in the way. So that was like that because I wanted this so that whenever you have forward motion here, you would have forward motion here. And what happens is, if you just mounted this like this, you would push forward here, which reverses the motion here, and that would reverse it there. It'd be the motion down there would be the opposite that it is here. So this way, you're reversing the motion here, but when it pivots there, it's reversing the motion again and canceling it out. And the reason why I had it like this is because I've ridden motorcycles for so many years that I'm so used to that pattern of one down and however many up, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever the case may be, and then all downshifting in forward motions. And this would be all the way down to first, and then it's the same bump, half bump up is neutral. So that way, if you've ridden motorcycles and you get into this, the shift pattern is the same, which was kind of a big deal. I wanted it that way so that there was no having to think about it, like I hop in this and it's like, well, is upshifting down or downshifting up, or is it the same? So it's the same. And then the clutch, it uses the factory cable right down here, and it loops around right here and then down to this perch. And I had to redo this clutch to keep, with this perch, the clutch pull is right there, right next to the pivot point of the pedal. The same way it would be on a clutch lever on a bike. And originally I had a clutch arm that came off the pedal and it came all the way up here. And my reasoning was, well, I can just run the cable down that support rod right into the top of there and it'll be easy peasy, which it was. But the problem was, again, with the diameter of circles, where the pivot point is on the pedal and the length of the pedal, with that long arm, when you move the pedal just a little bit, it's throwing that arm a lot, which made feathering the clutch out basically impossible. And the other thing it did is it required a ton of pedal pressure to engage the clutch because of, your leverage point is so much further away and so much shorter there. So I wound up cutting it down, and now it's beautiful. And before, it would wear my leg out just to move this, and I couldn't even move it by hand. And now, just 4 fingers, and I can got the full movement of the clutch, which obviously is even easier with your foot and your leg. So that solved that problem, which I had to get figured out because a clutch working improperly it's one of my pet peeves. It's just a nuisance. Number one, for getting going from a dead stop, but 2, especially off-road, if you get, say, caught coming out of a corner, maybe in a gear too high, if your clutch is set up properly, you can feather that, to keep your RPMs up till you get back up to speed. If it's not set up right, obviously you can't do that, or you can't do it as smoothly. So before, I basically had either a fully disengaged clutch or engaged. There was no in between. And now it's just right. And then the other thing was the fuel system, which wasn't too bad because I already had the cell installed. I did go ahead and put this vent filter and then the fuel pump. I had to make sure that coming out of the bottom of the cell, this is all down sloping. Got the filter and then down sloping into the pump. This is a little electric unit. It's only like, supposedly it's like 2 PSI. And it's just a rubber line out of there, down the frame rail like in a full-size car up to the engine. I'm still contemplating if I want to cut this here and run a hard line later, but we'll see. For right now, it's just got the rubber fuel hose up to this barb, and then the barb is 5/16 ID down to 1/4 inch, and then this is just a standard clear fuel hose like you would have on the bike. And I wanted this too so that if anything funky was going on with the pump or the line or anything that has to do with delivering fuel, that I could visually see that there's no fuel getting to the engine. And me personally, I've got that fuel pump set up on a toggle. So whenever I'm going to shut down, I just kill the toggle and then I let the engine idle and suck itself dry. And I see like all the time people are selling bikes and they'll be saying, runs fine, runs good, carb needs to be cleaned out. And it's like, if you know you're going to have your stuff sitting a long time, just go ahead and like on the bike, turn the fuel petcock or fuel valve off and just let it suck itself dry. I got into that religiously whenever I used to run race engines with methanol, because you have to run the engine dry every time due to the methanol wanting to eat aluminum if it's just sitting there. This shifter, I just went ahead and put this dice on here for now. I had it just laying around. And originally I had thought about, I've got this old antique pistol. And no, this does not work. In fact, I'll probably weld or braze this cylinder in to keep it in there. And originally I was like, oh, that thing would make a great shifter if I had just put it on there. And then it's just like I had read on a couple online forums about guys making jockey shifts. You can't really have a lot of weight on whatever your shift lever is, because what's going to happen is if you hit a big enough bump, this is so much weight up here that it could throw this way or this way and actually throw you into a different gear or out of gear. And these shifters, if it's this or a jockey shift on a bike, there should be nothing on there as far as weight. Which right now it's just optimal. So this pistol we're just gonna have to save for another project, which is fine. There's always another project. And then the other thing, which was kind of a headache, was mounting that rear brake caliper. I had come up with my own thing for that whole deal as well. Mostly because this is not any kind of factory setup. Everything is all custom one-off. So that's what's been going on with it. And I had to adjust all 3 chains just from that little bit of drive, which I already knew from experience that was going to happen. Anytime you put brand new chain on, the first time you drive it, everything's gonna stretch. So everything's back tight now. And that took care of that deal. So my mind is already on future projects. I got a lot of people asking me about mini bike builds. This, I still have quite a bit. I got to do a firewall, and like I said, I'm working on this dash right now. The biggest thing with this, besides looking better, is so I can get all of my switches mounted, because right now for that drive you saw me do, everything's just rigged up, man, and that's really dangerous. I really wouldn't want to do any serious long-term driving with it like that. I know more than a few people that would, but that's not me. I already had one short on this with the fuel pump switch, and I almost burned up a whole wire before I caught it. So I had mentioned in previous videos, I have this fuse block for it that I need to get in there and wired in, which would take care of all that kind of stuff. But that's what's going on with that, and I will keep you guys posted on the mini bike stuff. I am not sure on that yet. There's definitely a lot of people that want me to do those or do more of them, but it's one of those things where that as a builder, I don't know if I want to get stuck being like a mini bike guy. Like everybody knows me for just mini bikes. And I was never expecting that whenever I made the one that so many people would want one. And so we'll see how that goes. All right, guys. I'll talk to you later.